How's it going, everybody? It's Ronan from the Brass Knuckles Bible Club. I would like to introduce Nathan Barnett. He is our newest guest on this episode. Nathan is a U.S. Army veteran. He is a fellow brother in Christ, born again believer. He has a very gripping story and a very touching story that is tough to hear, but I would also imagine 10,000 times tougher to actually live and walk out. And, and he came out on the other side. He is a fitness content creator, and today he's going to be talking to us about his story. And so, Nathan, so it's kind of funny. This is actually our second go. We recorded last week, and I think this is a really important message. And not that any of the episodes aren't important, but I think this message in particular was important, and I judge that based off of the immediate blowback that we got. When we recorded this episode last week, I received a number of errors from this recording that absolutely should not happen. And again, technology fails. I understand that. But let me just put it to you this way. The kinds of failures that we are having, especially with the equipment that I'm working with, I have no viable explanation for. I spent all week troubleshooting it, and it was absolutely to no avail. For whatever reason, okay, something did not want that message getting out. So here we are. We're going at it again, second week in a row. This is take 2 of this episode. But you know what? I believe that God's hand is on this episode, and listen close, because somebody's going to be able to walk away with something from this. Nathan, how's it going, man?
It's going great, man. How you doing?
It's going all right. So here's the thing, man. So yeah, this is our second crack at it, and that's fine. That stuff happens. I gave you a little bit of an intro, but if you wouldn't mind doing me a favor, just go ahead, introduce yourself, tell them a little bit about you.
So my name is Nathan Barnett, like you said. Spent 10.5 years active duty Army, was stationed all over the world. I grew up in Oregon. Um, Started off, I didn't grow up in the church, right? I watched a lot of guys. They grew up in the church. I remember as a little kid, I was probably 6, 7 years old, visiting my grandfather. He took me to church a couple times. The only thing I remember out of going all those times as a kid was John 3:16 and memorizing that passage. And I look back and I'm like, that I think that's part of what drove me, to try to search for God. And as a kid, I searched. I went to Baptist church. I went to Protestant church. I went to about every church I could go to. I went to a Catholic church. Got yelled at because I took communion and didn't know the proper saying. But it was, it was that search. A lost kid trying to find his way. Um, it's kind of crazy because since we had this conversation, I got to watch you and Sergeant Nichols, Staff Sergeant Nichols conversation, and the thing that rung out was the not. I can't remember how you guys put it, but the wasn't quite there yet. Like I believed in God, but I just wasn't. I wasn't. I wouldn't be a true Christian.
Right.
So, and that was one of those things I like. I used to be like, oh, I was a Christian. I found Christ, and I'm like, I look back and I'm like, man, I wasn't quite there yet.
One of and I'm just going to jump it just 2 seconds.
Yeah.
One of my last guests, he put it very, very simply and like very, he hit the nail right on the head. He said, I always believed in Jesus, but I didn't always follow him. And so that just kind of like pow right in the
Yeah.
kisser. Is that kind of like what you're getting at?
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things like when you go back and you're like, oh, I was a Christian. I'm like, you know, because a lot of people don't realize, especially we don't talk about it as men. And a lot of people don't realize we do a lot more thinking about things and analyzing things than we let out. And
Right.
I know I do at least. And so all week I've been just sitting there going over my head, and thinking about the different things. And I was like, man, I don't think people realize how much we really analyze it. And then I was like, oh, I always considered myself a Christian, but I just wasn't quite there yet. But no, so I joined the army at like I signed up at 17. 9/11 happened my senior year. Of course, I knew I was going in the military before. It was one of those things that one, I didn't have the grades to go to college. I had no care to go to college. Come from a very large military family. My grandfather was Navy. My uncle was Navy. My other uncle was Air Force. So, I was like, I'm gonna go in the military. Knew I was gonna do it. And
Right.
and you got to serve. To me, I think everyone should serve their country, right? If you can't serve it, then
Yeah.
find something at home to serve. But get that sense of the community and service, and that sense of service is crucial to me. But so I joined the army. I did 3 deployments, one to Kuwait, two to Iraq. Fun times. I wasn't kicking indoors. I wasn't
Yeah.
on the ground. I was what we like to call a fobbit. I worked on helicopters. I kept them flying,
Right.
which was fun because I used to get made fun of by the infantry guys when you're an aviation guy. And then the first ride home, it was the coolest thing. The guy looks over at me, and I'm looking at his combat infantry badge, and I'm like, shit, here we go. This is be a long 18-hour ride. And he looks at me and goes, dude, you're aviation? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, when we get stateside, I'm buying you a beer. And it threw me off because I'm like, dude, normally you make fun of me and tell me I'm a sissy and stuff. And he goes, no, man, you guys, when we would call medevac, you guys were there. And I
Yeah.
was like, and then all of a sudden, like the whole situation, it really shifted. It wasn't no more of just, well, I fix helicopters. It was every helicopter, meant guys were either getting into the fight or getting out of the fight.
I can tell you, man, no matter how back in garrison, we all give each other crap and bust each other's chops and stuff and pogues and or we get called crunchies and all this other stuff, and it's really just sibling rivalry. But I'll tell you what, and I can attest to what that guy said. When the bird came to pick me and the rest of my platoon up, when we exfilled on my first
Hmm.
deployment, I'll tell you what, man, I there wasn't no other feeling in the world like seeing another service member's face someone
Hmm.
coming to get me.
Yeah.
So, in those moments when it counts, it's all love. All that stuff goes out the window, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just one of those fun parts. We look back at it, we laugh, and we got to poke.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Army, Marine Corps, Navy. We all have to poke and have a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
Um, so uh, when I joined the military, and we talked about it last week, so I'll bring it up before you ask about it, just because I know it'll be brought up. Um, I'm gonna tell you right now, I was a lost kid. Low self-esteem. I grew up. My father was a raging alcoholic, verbally abusive. I was told I was excuse my language, a fat, lazy piece of shit that would never amount to anything. And I had teachers tell me that as a kid growing up too,
Wow.
um, which is actually like I look back at it and it drives my personality. Um, I
That's a very different song and dance than the culture now where everyone's beautiful, everyone's a
Right.
hero. You know what I mean?
I remember I remember my seventh grade teacher. Um, we played different games from different cultures, and
yeah,
my grandfather was the type of man. If you were going to do something, you're going to do it right. And so when I played with his
yeah,
chessboard, he sat me down and said, "You're going to learn how to play chess." And so I beat the class favorite, in the championship game with Fool's Mate. And the teacher was like, "You cheated." And the same teacher was like, "You'll never mount anything." The fun part was is when I graduated AIT, you get to go home after AIT. As
yeah.
I was walking to the football field, the football stadium for a game, in my Class A's with my aviation ribbon on my chest, that same teacher was standing right there checking IDs and taking the cash. And I was like, "Hey, I never mounted anything. I work on multi-million-dollar helicopters. How's that work for you?" Um, which is fun because, like I said, I like being told I can't do something. It
Yeah.
motivates. So my dad, being 17, he had to sign the paperwork. My mom signed it. Of course, typical mom, she was worried about, "Oh, don't go infantry, don't do this, don't do the dangerous ones." My dad laughed and was like, "I'll see you back in 2 weeks." And so to me, I was like, "Okay, we can do this."
Did
Uh,
that mess with you at all when you were older? I know at the
uh,
time it pushed you, but
yeah, a lot of resentment. Um, I was angry at my father for probably many years. It was definitely something that I had to learn with. That whole I laugh because a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, the Bible was written 2,000 years ago," and I'm like, You don't realize how much wisdom is in that book until you start really looking and applying it to your life."
well, it's
Um,
alive and active. I mean, it's just as true today as it was when it was written. So,
right.
I mean, the verbiage might be a little bit different, but essentially, nothing new is under the sun. This is all the same stuff. I mean, the only thing that's changed is the lingo and the technology.
Yeah. And so that forgiveness, I think, was like one of the biggest things. Once I figured out how to do that and learned that you don't have to forget, you don't have to be best friends with the person that wronged you, but learning how to forgive them. I think that once I was able to figure out how to do that, a lot of that resentment went, well, all of it went away. Now I look back at it and it doesn't really bother me.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Um, I know it sounds simple on its face, but there's a there's a lot of guys out here, especially like when you're talking about military types, Army, Marines, you're talking about really headstrong guys
Mhm.
that when they get hurt, they use it as fuel. It might push them to the next echelon, right? It might push them to, ascend to 75th Rangers or 160th SOAR or SF or Delta
Mhm.
or whatever. Like it definitely has its place. The hurt and the pain definitely has its place in propelling those types of men. But I also noticed that, and this was myself for a long time, those men, they get very bitter as well. Like
Mhm.
that pain, it's it's like the word forgiveness to them is like holy water to a demon. In
Yeah.
that time, in that moment, they can't even conceive it. So, like I said, obviously the Webster's dictionary definition of forgiveness, I understand on its face, forgive them.
Mhm.
But coming from you, how? Like how do you forgive them when they hurt you like that?
So, you know, my wife has a lot of cool sayings. I like, military. I like stealing sayings. My wife once told me it's really hard to hate someone that you pray for.
That's good.
And I
Wow,
think
I'm
that's
gonna
the
steal
key.
that. I'm gonna
Yeah,
steal that.
it's good, isn't it? And so it's one of those things. Like I mean, and that's the thing. It's really hard to hate someone that you pray for. And the funny part is you can't do it through yourself. We are
Right,
imperfect humans trying to learn. Well, some of us are trying to live a perfect life, and you can't do it on your own. So prayer I think is the biggest thing. And not getting caught up in the why. A lot of people get, well, why did this happen to me? And I know I'm one of those. Like I got caught up, I'm pretty sure we'll discuss it later. There's a lot of whys. Why did this happen to me? Why are you making me go through this?
right.
Um, and you get caught up on the whys and you get caught up on the actual thing of it, and you don't look at the full picture. Like it happened, you can't change it. The only thing you can do is pray and ask God, one to help the person,
Yeah,
that wronged you. And I think that's one of the key things because once you start doing that, once you start praying for someone, it's almost like, I mean, you remember it, you remember the actions. Like I remember getting woke up in the morning, asking why I ate something, and he was too drunk and stoned to remember he ate it. But
right.
I don't have that gut wrenching like about it anymore. I'm like, he was battling his demons, and unfortunately, it I was a byproduct. That whole I love the shirts that um, breaking what is it called when you have the family curses. I'm trying to think of the actual term for it, the biblical term. Um, but I don't drink like I did because I was like, my kids aren't going to grow up with a dad that's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was really focused on you know just trying to come to terms with it. Which like I said, prayer is probably the biggest thing at all. And I think at some point it was just all of a sudden out of nowhere it was like gone. The anger wasn't there anymore.
So, speaking of bitterness, tell us what happened when you were in the army when you went out for SF selection.
So yeah. Um, So I got the pleasure of doing Robin Sage twice while I was stationed at Fort Bragg. And I actually had one of the cadres come up to me and tell me that I should go out for selection. I like I said, I'm not the high speed dude, but I don't know, maybe he saw something in me. It's probably the fact that I don't like quitting and I'm kind of a little bit of a hardhead, and I like working as a team at the same time. But so I was trying to prepare for selection. I was going to drop my packet right after my first deployment. Um, and I was in like amazing shape. I mean, I was hitting the gym hard. I was at the time my PT score was like 296, 297. Um, I was like 180 pounds. I mean, I was in really, really good shape.
You're a stud.
And yeah, which coming from the fat kid I was in high school, I look back at it and I'm like, man. And so we were playing volleyball, getting ready to. We had handed back over the mission to another unit. We were just waiting to go home, and me and my TI, my technical inspector, were talking crap back and forth, and he was like, "I'm going to spike on you." I told him there's no way it could happen. Of course, he jumped up, I jumped up, went to block the spike, and landed on my ankle. And I mean, just immediately, I completely rolled it
Annihilated it.
over, annihilated it. Which is actually funny because I finally got my reval today for that ligament tear in my ankle. They finally
Yeah.
moved it from 0 to 10%. Woo woo.
Wow. High roller.
Yeah,
So,
big time now. Um, but that completely annihilated my prospects. No one ever told me that you go to sick call when you want to get out of PT or you
yeah.
got a boo boo. You make a doctor's appointment when you have an injury, and I learned that way too late in my career. I'd go to sick call, 30-day profile, here's some Motrin, here's some water, go away. And I did that for damn near a year. And it was just constant, right? I think I had three x-rays on the ankle. I asked for an MRI. The doc told me there's no reason to get an MRI of it and just pushed me out the door like, go, go. And so that dream of, going to selection, whether I made it or not made it, um, it ate at me, that was that
Yeah.
goal. And then on top of it, as well as I do, military, you could be the shittiest NCO in the world, but man, if you got a 300 PT score, you're the PT stud, you walk on water.
Yep.
And so, that was a battle. Every time I walked into a different unit, and there was a couple different units I walked in, the first thing they would do is they'd look at me and here's this fat NCO. And, they didn't care that it was, I was struggling on my run because my ankle was still jacked. Um, it was, hey, you're fat, you need to lose weight. But they don't ever really teach you anything other than, here, go to this doctor's appointment. You need to stop eating so much and run more. And I look back at what I knew for physical education, back then, and I look what I know now, and I'm like, they were completely off. I would,
Yeah.
I, if I would have been in my shoes back then, I'd have been in the gym, lifting heavy weights. I would have been concentrating, on my macros. I mean, I didn't even know what a macro was until I got out of the military.
Yeah.
And so, that left me really bitter for a lot of years in the military because it wasn't a lack of ability.
Right.
Hell, I had a first sergeant who was, I love the guy to death, and I'll say his name on here. And if he hears me, then at least he knows that he actually did, made an impression in my career. His name was First Sergeant Parsons. Guy was like 5'4", maybe 130 pounds, 150 pounds soaking wet. And we'd go for runs, and he was like, "Man, you make the runs." He goes, "Barnett, you got to lose some weight, Sergeant." And I'm like, First Sergeant, I'm trying. And he goes, "Dude, you're an amazing NCO." He goes, "I can technically flag you, but," he goes, "you do all these things. You're the urinalysis NCO, you're the combo NCO, you're running shop platoons, the avionics maintenance guys." He's like, "You're killing it, but," he goes, "your weight's the only thing that's stopping you, but I'm not gonna. He goes, "You're a big guy that can run. If we get, shot at, I want you there because you can throw me over your shoulders and take me." And he's like, "And I've never been that big. I don't know what it's like." Um, so he was one of those ones that, was really, I was like, okay, here's a guy, I can follow this guy. And then he ended up moving, when, ETSing or PCSing to a different unit, and the crew that came in just gunned for me. As soon as day one they came in, I was at the time I was volunteering as a firefighter. I was like, you know what, I would screw this. I'm getting out of the military. Um, so I was volunteering, and the fire department would pay for your firefighter one, firefighter two, and your EMS one and two. And so I was like, well, they'll pay for it, why I'm volunteering. Let me try to get this while I'm in the military, so when I, transition out, I can go straight to the fire department. So they was working on trying to get my firefighter one, and um, I had requested to do the class, and you have to go through your unit and everything like that. And they were trying to send me to NCC, and I ended up pissing them off because I was trying to take it up. I mean, I've been in for 10 years, had three deployments at this point, um, and ended up going going on a TDY mission. I got back, and I think it was like 10 o'clock in the morning. I was doing my sensitive items inventory because I've been gone for 30 days. Uh, and I get a phone call, "Hey, I need you up in First Sergeant's office right now." And so I get up there, and I knew what they were going for. We're going to tape you at 10 o'clock in the morning. I've ate, I've drank. You don't ever tape a soldier, other than right at PT. And so of course I'm like, "Fine, you're gunning for me. I got this." I walked up there, stuck my stomach out, took off my ACU top, and was like, "Let's do this." And of course they're like, "Oh, we're going to chapter you because you failed your tape test again." And ended up finding it. Was able to stay. I think I had 4 months before I ETS'd with my leave left. and they were trying to chapter me. I mean, this is 2012. Obama was gunning for everyone in the military. They were trying to push everyone out. So I uh, I was able to stay in, fought it, and of course ticked some people off, but I kind of enjoyed that. Uh, going back to being bitter, I
Yeah.
was got out of the military. During this whole time, I was searching, and we kind of didn't really just kind of left the thing. Even during this whole time, I was searching for God. I knew God existed.
Yeah.
Um, very angry uh, with everything that happened. With my ankle, with the military. I thought I was going to be a lifer for sure. That was my goal when I joined the military. Was I was going to do 20 years and get out and retire. Um,
I kind of want to. I know you might not be a super fan of this, but just in case anybody else can identify, what exactly were you thinking? Like, what were you feeling as it relates to God in that time? I know you say you were bitter. What was some of kind of the inner dialogue that was going on there?
a lot of it was, why would you do this to me? Why would you crush my dreams? Why would you allow me to go through this? Why do I always have to fight?
Yeah.
Um, and I had some really bad experiences with churches early on in my military career. I remember going to one, got invited with one of the guys in the unit. He's like, "Hey, come to church." And so we get to church, and they pull this like 16-year-old boy and girl in front of this 300-person congregation and berate them for having premarital sex. And this is my first time at this church. And like, just of course, he was like, the next week he's like, "You want to come back to church?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." um the chaplains we had in the military, I try to talk to them a little bit here and there, and it was always just, I don't want to say standoffish, but when I asked questions, it was never like, never got answers. It was always just kind of, "Well, come to church." And at that point, I'd only see him once every now and then. So when I did see him, it was always really lackluster. So like, it was always that the feeling of why, and I think that when you sit there and ask yourself why over and over again, you get to a point where I actually got to a point when I was still in the military that it was, well, if God, would allow me to do this, then but I'm a good person. I try to do,
Yeah.
do right. I don't cheat on my spouse. I don't do all these things. And then it was, people would come up to the house and be like, "Hey, can I tell you about God?" And I would nitpick the smallest translation I could find. And, we
Yeah.
talked about this last time, and I've had this conversation with my wife a million times or several times. I fear when I die for my actions trying to talk people out of believing in Christ. And it was the bitterness, it really was. It was, um, it's one of my biggest fears now. And I know I'm not opposed to fear, but, and I know Jesus well, God forgive us as far as the East is from the West, right? But what I did to me in my eyes is
Cause
unthinkable.
other people to stumble or question.
Yeah, to stumble or question. I mean, how would God see that in his eyes?
Yeah.
Um, so I struggle with it. And I told you this last time, and I've had this conversation with my wife. My biggest fear is when I get to heaven, God's gonna look at me and be like, "Get away from me! I've never known you." And
Yeah, I understand the fear, and it's we can talk about that, and trust me, I can talk to you about that until the cows come home. Um, thank goodness that's a very that's a very misunderstood verse, but it shows me your heart in that you don't have to fear because If you didn't fear, then I would say you would probably have to fear something like that. The fact
Right.
that the fact that you even think that shows that you have a reverence for God, and it shows that you have a healthy level of fear of God, and you everyone should. It doesn't mean to be terrified and piss your pants every time you mess up, but it does mean that, like, no, I mean, he does. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. I mean, like, he does have the power to destroy not just body, but body and soul in hell. So you would be a fool not to be fearful. But they, I totally understand. I totally understand. And you know what? We don't we don't know how that conversation's going to go, because um we are justified through Christ and
Hmm.
his death, burial, and resurrection, so long as we repent and put our trust and our faith in the finished work of Christ on the cross, then we will see eternal life with him in heaven. But that doesn't mean that he might not pull us to the side and be like, hey, man, I love you, but we got something we need to square away. Like, I wasn't so hot when this happened. And would he have every right? Absolutely. Would he have every
Hmm.
right to do that with absolutely every single thing we ever did, said, or thought? Yeah. Yeah, he would. Because the truth is that we don't deserve any of it. So even if you and I got to get taken aside and get a little get a little drill instructor, drill sergeant action, um, do we deserve that? 1,000,000%. But I'm
if
glad
that if
that
that if that's the cost of me getting to heaven, accepting Jesus Christ and getting a little old school smoking, I'm down for everything I do in
I'm
my
done.
life.
Yeah.
I'm like, sign me up. We can do this.
Yeah. So but that's good that you at least have a reverence, because there's some people that don't. They don't fear, they don't question, they don't think. And again, like I said, it's you shouldn't be pissing your pants every single time, but
Right.
you should have a healthy level of fear. I mean, it would be foolish not to. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, so okay, so people would come to the door, Jehovah's Witnesses or anybody else. I mean, them. That's a totally different episode, but I can understand you being critical. I can understand you being critical of them, because there's
Anybody that
sometimes
was
that I kind of. But
I'm a parent.
anyone that
I
is
used
trying
to
to
have,
talk to you about Jesus,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I even used to go out of my way to mess with our chaplain at the fire department. I mean, it was bad. It really was. And,
yeah,
I can look back at it now, and I hope that anybody I talk to just saw a bitter, angry guy and it just ignored me. Hopefully they
yeah.
prayed for me. Um,
It
but
probably did. I mean, and you're not
it
going to know that
probably,
until you get there either. I mean, God might show you on the screen of your life, be like, hey, listen, while you were acting like this person was praying
yeah,
for you. You know what I mean? So, like, I think there's going to be a lot of that for
yeah.
everyone.
And I think we'll be surprised. It's one of those things. I look back at it now, and I almost laugh at the person I used to be. Um,
Yeah.
just the angriness of it and the energy it took to be angry all the time. People don't
It's
realize how
exhausting.
much. Yeah, it really is. People look at me now, and they're like, "You're always in a good mood. You're always laughing and joking," and I'm like,
Because I have the
and
energy.
I, I have to tell people, I'm like, I, I'm I'm not the person I used to be, and I've spent many years coming to the person I am now. Please don't ever make me go back to that person, because that person still, that ability to become angry still exists. I just don't like it,
Yeah.
and I buried him years ago. Um, and so I look back, and we. So I got out of the military. And I didn't bring it up. I forgot. a lot of convert. We talk 18. I did 10 and a half years, so from childhood to the military to now, I forget things. Um, but so I popped up as a DoD bone marrow donor right as I was getting out of the military. Um, did that. That was a really cool thing. Ended up was supposed to be going to Afghanistan as a civilian contractor for a year. Make uh, that good contractor money.
Contractor money.
My wife didn't know at the time, but I was going to do 2 years. It was my goal to pay off my house and come back.
Yeah.
I didn't tell her that. Sorry, that was my dog. Um, but so that fell through at the last minute. Ended up taking a job in North Carolina back at Fort Bragg as a contractor there. Got laid off about 8 months into it. Still, this was all before I really came, full circle back to Christ. But got laid off. I mean, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
Nearest jobs, the next military base. So ended up moving back to Oregon where I grew up, and um, that's when I started riding motorcycles. That helped with the PTSD. I struggled with with PTSD, anxiety, and depression really bad when I got out of the military. Uh,
Yeah.
I think a lot of it was a loss of purpose, a loss of mission. Um, when you're overseas and you're deployed, in the army we had a saying. It was, mission first, soldiers always. And so it was always mission first, and then of course your soldiers were always. Um, so when you leave that sense of duty, that sense of where you belong, your rank system, I mean everything. Where getting told when to be there, how to be, what to wear. uh, y-
Everything
It's
gets rug
all
pulled. Yeah.
what's that?
Everything gets rug pulled. They
Yeah,
just yank the rug out from under you.
and it just makes it even worse, right? So I mean, I went down a dark, depressive, world, and um, still very bitter. And we ended up moving from Eugene, Oregon over to Bend, Oregon. Got a job, same company I was working for, became an electrician. They needed a journeyman over on the other side of the hill, as we call it. And so I went over, and we were walking by this, old strip mall, and there was a church there. So my wife was like, hey, we should check out this church. We might be able to make friends over here because we didn't know anybody. Um, so we went that next Sunday and ended up right after church was done. The pastor came up and was like, hey, I'd like to take y'all out to lunch. Told us his testimony. He said he grew up in the church, ended up getting hooked on drugs, and had moved down to LA. And he said it was in a bathroom stall, laying on the ground, and needle in his arm. And he all of a sudden Christ spoke to him, and he ended up at that moment was like, I'm going to get myself clean. I'm devoting my life to Christ. And it was moving because I mean, here I am. I've never been hooked on drugs or anything like that. And this guy's telling me, mid needle plunge, he's over here, devoting his life to Christ. And so we got, pretty active with them. Um, and then I'd rode with a veteran nonprofit group, motorcycles, and they were having a thing on the other side of the hill about 3 months later after this all happened. Uh, it was around Christmas time. It was the wife was like, "Hey, why don't you take the kids to the grandkids or the grandparents, and we'll have a little bit of time." And she was feeling sick, so I was like, "All right, no big deal." So I took the kids, took them over, and something during dinner just wasn't feeling right. I was like, I need to get back. It's about a 2 hour drive. Let me head back. And so I get back, and she's go to check on her and take her temperature, and it's 105 degrees. And with my first responder training, I know 105 is dangerous. It's not, oh, you have a high fever. This is your brain damage at this point.
Right.
Um, and so of course I chew her butt for it and take her to the emergency room right away and they admit her, straight into the ICU and her kidneys and liver was shutting down and they couldn't figure out why. And they ended up figuring out she had a super rare autoimmune disorder called HLH. Don't ask me to pronounce it. I can't pronounce it. It's like 45 letters long and it doesn't make any sense. But researching it, that came out, it's like 1 in 1.2 million people get it. You're born with it, and it's mainly children that have it activate. It's even
What is
rarer
it?
for,
Like what does it do?
it's like a cancer. It just attacks your body. Your cells attack itself, and it shuts down your liver and your kidneys. Um,
So this isn't like a chronic thing. This is like an acute thing that just like
yeah, it's one of those things that just you're born with it, and all of a sudden, whether it was her being sick and her body all of a sudden just decided to activate it, then it did. Um, the crazy part is when I asked the doctors, ended up succumbing to it, unfortunately, after about a month in the ICU. Um, but when I asked the doctors, I was like, "Hey, I got 3 kids. Like, do I need to go get them checked out? Like, what do we need to do?" And the
yeah.
doc was like, "Dude, I wouldn't even worry about it." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "This is so rare. The chances of your children, it's hereditary, but the chances of them having it, it's astronomical." And I'm
So it's like
like,
SIDS in a way,
I don't know
kind
what
of.
SIDS is. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Sudden infant death, but
Okay, yeah,
for older people.
yeah, it
Wow.
was crazy. The crazy part about it all is, I remember about a month into the ICU, I the nurses kind of like made fun of me a little bit here and there because like I was like a drill sergeant in there. You couldn't be in a bad mood. You couldn't talk ill. Like be straight up and honest about the situation, but let's do it from a lighthearted, point of view.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there, and nothing was getting better. And I remember sitting there, stepping out and uh, just praying and being like, God, if this is something she can recover from, and live a healthy life, like I'm in the fight for it. Like let's do this. I'm here for the long haul. Like I'm a fighter. I like it. Let's go. Um, but if this is something that she's not going to recover, the quality of life is not going to be what she wants. Like take her home. Um, and about 2 hours later, the doc came walking up to me. I was sleeping on a couch in the waiting room that they have in the ICU. And he's like, Mr. Barnett, we need to talk. And so we go over to a different room, and I'm like, well, this ain't good because they don't just pull you in a room, wake you up in the middle of the night for no reason. He's like, you got a decision to make. She's the chances it's not going to happen. And he goes, we can keep her alive for as long as we want. But even if for somehow like we were able to beat the HLH, the amount of uh, brain damage she has from airway loss and getting ARDS while in the hospital, which is another crazy upper respiratory. I can't remember. It's like pneumonia inside the lungs. And
Yeah.
it's common for people who have go into ICU to get it, right? Especially
Yeah.
because her kidneys weren't working, they're pumping her full of fluids. Um, he's like I'm like, well, what would we call it? Like talk quality of life? He's like, if we brain damage and probably never walking again. And I'm like, well, she wouldn't want that. Like, if that's what it is, then I told her parents aside and was like, hey, this is what we're looking at. This is what the doctor's saying. We got to make this decision. Um, and it was rough. It's by no means an easy decision. Especially father of 3 kids. Um, but at that point, what do you do? I asked God a
What
question.
yeah. I mean, what
He
was their
answered.
take on it?
They were young. I think they were like 9, 7, and 5, somewhere around those ages. Uh, the older two girls were definitely, a little bit, you know, confused. They didn't
Yeah.
understand why. The youngest, he kind of he was too young to really comprehend all of it.
Yeah.
So, at that point, it was, most people would deal with it, going back to the why.
Yeah.
Um, and I did something completely different, and I don't know why. Laugh why? I don't know why I did it, but at that moment, it was, the mission was my kids.
Right.
The why, the why was trusting God. And I
Okay.
don't, and the only thing I can think of is the Holy Spirit was just telling me, just have faith, just have faith. Um, and so it was one of those things like a lot of people, dive into a bottle. A lot of people go into straight depression. Um, and, I was hurting, but I was concentrated so much on my kids and just, God has a plan for me. I don't know what it is. I don't, I just need to just have faith and trust in Him, and it's going to work out. I think that's the only thing that drove me was the fact that I was like, if I have enough faith and I follow Him, everything's going to be okay. I might not understand why today. I might not understand why tomorrow, but one day I'm gonna understand why. And it might be when I get to heaven. I don't know, but I just have to
I
have that
just,
faith.
man, I got to commend you because it is so much easier to say that than to do that. And in the fact that you did that, it is just it's another testament of the peace that God brings
Hmm.
if he can bring comfort in the midst of hurt that is that deep. Does this how are you guys doing now? Does this make the holidays hard?
I've never liked the holidays, so I, I I've been to too many third world countries that
I understand that.
me
I
and
get that. I get that. You know, I'm
me,
kind of
me
that
and the
way too.
holidays don't do well. Um, I don't think it really affects. To me, it doesn't really affect the holidays. I've always my holidays have always been centered around everyone else's enjoyment. And I don't know if that's a father thing, um, and we were really big. So I got a lot of support, and it was you know I got a lot of support from friends and family, and then so fast forward about probably about I want to say like 4 months, 4 or 5 months, and I ended up making a friendship that really helped me. Um, so it was funny. I had a friend on Facebook that never talked, a woman, and we were like, she was on my Facebook. We have all the same mutual friends, um, and she had posted something about life being short. And of course, me with my typical brashness, I private messaged her and said, "Yeah, no shit, sorry." Um, and she responded back to me with, "I know what you're going through. If you ever need to talk, shoot me a message." And I was like, at this point, I had a lot of women that were, "Oh, I know what you're going through. If you ever need someone to talk to," and I'd be like, "Yeah, hey, what are you doing this Saturday?" And they're like, "Oh, the kids are going to their dad's." Okay. You don't really understand what I'm going through. This isn't I can send my kids to their their moms
Yep.
type thing. And so that's what I thought it was. And her talk about opening your mouth and putting your foot in. Her response back was, um, my kids, my two of my kids' dad died when they were 1 and 2.
What
in a
happened?
car accident.
Car
In a
accident?
car accident. And so I'm like, oh, well, she knows what I'm going through. And even then, she did it at a very younger, a lot younger of an age.
Yeah.
Um, so we had all the same mutual friends. And so we started talking, she was, kind of, I tell veterans all the time, don't be afraid of reaching out and talking. Talking is probably one of the biggest things that helped me with my anxiety and PTSD. Um, whether you reach out to a veteran, a pastor, talk to somebody. Of course, I think Jesus is the key to fix it all. But
All right. So let's rewind just a little bit. We'll pick that back up. But when so you told me that you struggled with PTSD after you got out of the military, right?
Mhm.
And then this happens.
Yeah,
What and this is kind of personal, but I mean this whole thing's personal.
yeah.
Was there any time you considered checking out?
Oh man, so I might get a little flack for this. I have this. There was times that I got to the point where I wanted to, but there was something. I get so frustrated, and I've had soldiers, and that's probably one of the reasons I have PTSD. Is I had a soldier, commit on my last deployment, um, and I didn't get him the help he should have got, and I deal with that, and I knew better, but um, we're not going to do this. All right,
It's all right, man.
so um, the thing is I get so angry about. To me, it's what are you teaching your children? And I understand it comes. They see it at a place where they're doing a favor.
I got to stop you again. This is kind of my key that we need to hit on this because this keeps screwing up right here. So
Okay,
I'm gonna. All right. Rewind in just a little bit.
so
You,
I had
you
a
so
soldier. Um, I struggle with it. I had a soldier when my last deployment. He uh, he checked out when we were in Iraq, and I didn't get him the help I knew I should have. I reported him to the sergeant major. The sergeant major, when we were rear D, the sergeant major pushed it off and pushed him through. I knew better. I knew I should have said more. I should have done something more than what I did. And I struggle with that. But the the thing that gets me the most is as a father, as a husband, it's our responsibility to lead and to care for our family. And what are we teaching our children when we do that? And I know I understand that there are people that the mental health aspect of it, they think they're doing their family a favor. And I understand, and I'm not trying to take it away from anybody that's ever committed suicide. That's not what I'm doing. I just I have this internal anger towards when people do it. To me, it's the easy way out, and that's how I've always looked at it. So I get really, really frustrated, really angry when I have to deal with it because it's one of those things that like you're going to have struggles. Like
yeah
I've been going with struggles since I was a little kid. I mean, you deal with them, you move on, and you keep going forward. Like there's no quit option. Um, I didn't tell you this. I laughed. Had a really good NCO I had when I first joined the military. The guy's name was Sergeant Tyler, and I thought me and him were gonna. I thought we were gonna kill each other at one point. Um, he his first comment to me is, "I'm gonna get you to quit." Like as a challenge,
stop
He's like, "I'm gonna break
stop
you," and yeah,
So. Won't even let me stop it. All right. Well, if that's the way that's going to be, then you know what? I'm just gonna. All right. So, everybody, we've had to stop this recording several times. It's like I said last time. I've never run into this ever before. Um, the um, the fiery darts are flying on this one. But I waited all week, and so did he. We're not stopping. So we did it off air. About to pray again on air. So this is just going to be part of this message. And so here we go. All right. Heavenly Father, God, thank you for this day. Thank you for everything that you've given to us. God, I don't understand what's going on right now. I understand that it's not my job to understand that. But it's evident to me that something is trying to come against this recording. Something is trying to come against Nathan's testimony and the wisdom that he is sharing. God, I pray that you would send down your angels, and if there's any unclean spirit or demonic spirit that is trying to rise up and is trying to neutralize or corrupt or kibosh this recording for this podcast, I pray that your angels would deal with them swiftly and that they would be expelled from this area. God, I pray that you would cancel any and all fiery darts that are being fired at myself or at Nathan or at this podcast. And Lord, I pray that your spirit would move through and cleanse and purify this message. And I pray that though the technical difficulties would come, that you would grant us the endurance to push forward. And I pray that the rest of this recording would go well and that the information would get to whoever it needs to get to push the truth of the gospel and the truth of Jesus Christ to whoever needs it. I pray this and I ask this fervently and humbly. I ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Well, strange as that is, never had to do that in the middle of a recording. But this is the type of stuff that I've been talking about this entire show. The entire point of this show is not to just tell crazy testimonies, but to push the truth of Jesus Christ, which actively pushes back against darkness and against dark forces. It's Ephesians 6:12. And so, you know, is a very taboo subject. It is a very prevalent subject that is prevalent in not just military, but first responders. And unfortunately, it is something that is, it's so commonplace now that some people think it's acceptable.
Yeah.
I'm joined with you in the thought that it isn't. That it's not an acceptable option. So anyway,
So I was saying, I brought him up just because it kind of goes in the whole thing, right? He was, I'm gonna break you, I'm gonna make you quit. It was some stupid comment, and my response back was good luck. And we spent 3.5 years together, and he was the strictest, meanest 82nd infantry kind of guy, or not infantry, 82nd, you know, guy that you've ever seen. I mean, he held me to a standard that I thought was impossible to reach. But it was one of those things like it helped mold me into the NCO I was. Um, he it, we joke about it now. He's one of my best friends now. It's funny, you think you're not gonna like a guy. Me and him are. I mean, he's my brother. He call me any time of the day. I'm gonna be there for him. Um, and that's what we joke. We're like, I was like, hey, how did that work for you? And he's like, you're stubborn. And I'm like, I was like, well, you never quit trying. And so it was always a good laugh, right? And but it's one of those things. There's no failure's not an option.
Right.
Stumbling, crawling, you know, that's why I started the TikToks, right? Was
Yeah.
my wife watches me. Took a year and a half off of doing anything legs. I got arthritis in both my knees. I'm 41 years old and I'm battling with this knee pain. And you can like I purposely will show the videos when I'm posting when I'm doing leg workouts. I was trying to do a reverse lunge and my knees sitting there shaking. And it's that purpose is listen, we're all going to have struggles.
Yeah.
Quitting's not an option. What are you going to do about it? I mean, there's nothing. VA tells me, oh, well, your knees are crap. It is what it is. You have arthritis.
Yeah.
Okay, what are we going to do about it?
Right.
So
S-
same thing with
s-
life, right? What are you going to do?
So I I brought this up in my episode with Staff Sergeant Nichols. Um, when I believe it was the Valhalla project.
I think there's a
Um,
couple.
so when they started the whole 22 a day challenge, um, it was a Facebook trend. Military vets, they would get on and they'd record themselves doing 22 push-ups for 22 days. And so the whole premise for anybody who doesn't know or doesn't remember the trend, um, at that time, statistically, about 22 veterans, service members, would die by their own hand every day. And I think that number's dropped a good bit. I think it's down to something like 17% or 17 a day. Not that any a day is good, but 17 is better than 22. And when that whole thing came out, I had just got out too, and I was bitter. I was pissed. I was not like I am now. And when that came out, I'll admit I was kind of cynical. You know what I mean? Because people would get up and they do these 22 and everybody'd share it and like and comment and whatever. And I just saw it as like a PR stunt, right? And and I there was a stretch of time where every 3 to 4 months, I'd get a random phone call from one of my guys saying, "Hey, man, Gary checked out," or "Hey, I mean, Mike, he's no longer with us." And then I'd see some vague Facebook post saying that he lost a battle to his demons, and then it would say "Till Valhalla." You know what I mean? And first of all, now I have a number of problems with that. Second of all, um, at the time, like I was very cynical. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I believe if the Till Valhalla guy, if he ever sees my stuff, I'd love to collab with you. I believe in what you're doing. I will admit at that time I was cynical and I was just downright I was just kind of pissy. I had a piss poor attitude about it. Not anything you were doing specifically. Your heart was in the right place, for sure. Um But I was just like, okay, 22 days, 22 push-ups. What are we doing? All this raises awareness. Well, thanks, jackass. Like I wasn't aware that my friends are suck starting their rifles. Like, you know what I
Right.
mean? Great. Okay, we're aware that this is a problem. This isn't doing anything. This isn't fixing anything. All
Hmm.
this is doing is getting you likes and shares on Facebook and Instagram. Okay? It's virtue signaling for the military. And that's how I saw it. And again, not the right way of looking at it. It was very cynical, it was very pissy. And the Till Valhalla guy, I'm sorry. I'm just being honest, right? But I believe that it's missing a key point. And like I was talking about with Staff Sergeant Nichols, I I was so close before God intervened. Um I wouldn't even equate it to seconds. I would equate it to pounds of pressure. Close, if you're catching my drift. Um Actively being pulled towards the back wall, if you're catching my drift, before he stepped in and stopped me. And so knowing what I know now, we can end 22 a day. It can be done tomorrow. And it should be. It should be. We should. I want the 22 a day to be done. I want to end the 22 tomorrow. And there's a way we can do it. And for the Till Valhalla guy, I'm sure you wouldn't complain. You'd probably have to start another company. But I don't want that company to be a company.
Yeah.
I don't want it to have to be a company. I want to end it, and we can. Anybody who thinks that I'm crazy, just keep listening. We can end the 22 a day tomorrow. And here's how we're doing it. So, first, yes, we're aware there's a problem,
Hmm.
but we need an answer to that problem. And we have an answer to that problem. The answer to that problem, it sounds so corny, but it's Jesus. He is the answer to that problem.
Amen.
Because this was such a huge phenomenon. People were like, I don't understand. And because it's also like a domino effect. You know what I mean? So, like, every time somebody does it, it just makes it puts that much more momentum behind it and makes it seem like it is that much easier and more acceptable for the next person to do. So by the time it's down the line, it'd be like, well, shit, man. Doc did it. Mike did it. Gary did it. Travis did it. Jeff did it. Everybody did it. Screw it. Everybody's gone, right?
Yeah.
Or if this is a family trait, dad did it, grandpa did it, great grandpa did it, Uncle Larry did it, my aunt did it. You know what I mean? And so it's this cancerous spirit of death
Hmm.
that makes people think that that's okay, and it's not.
Well, and I think a lot of people don't realize, and there's a big difference between possession and oppression. And I can tell you right now, that's one thing that, even as a Christian, that oppression, you know, and it goes back to that power of prayer. Um, you know, Girl walks by in a little skirt. You look over and just no, Lord, not today.
Yeah.
Cast, get away from me. And a lot of people, like, I have to tell my sons, I'm like, don't be afraid of using Jesus. You start thinking, any type of sinful thought, cast it away. Don't be afraid of doing it. Do it out loud and stand on it. I love my wife to death. She'll talk about my current wife, putting the Bible down and standing on the Word of God. Don't be afraid of doing it.
I just thought of something. I don't think it's. I'm going to catch flack for this. I don't care. What the hell? It's my podcast. I'm going to say it. Okay. If YouTube wants to cancel me, I'm on Rumble. Okay. Whatever. I don't think it's mental health at all. Here's what I mean by that. I don't think it's mental health at all. To clarify, no, I'm not a doctor, not a pastor, not a professor, not a prophet, okay, not a psychologist, but, okay, I read my Bible. Here's where I'm going at. I don't think it's a mental illness at all. I'm not the type that thinks there's a demon around every corner. I'm not the type that thinks that, like, there's a demon under every rock. I'm not the devil made me do it type. No, there's a lot of stuff. I think we give the devil way too much credit. But when you're thinking about yourself, when you have your inner dialogue, you're always speaking about yourself in the present tense. First person. I, me, my. The three things every drill instructor hates to hear, right? Staff Sergeant Nichols. My, I, right? They hate first person. But that's your inner dialogue. That's you. That's your soul. When you're having those thoughts are coming third person because you're not saying, I'm no good. What you hear is, you're no good.
Mm-hmm.
You're worthless. They would be better off without you. You should just end it. That's not you. That's not your thoughts. That's a demonic spirit. And they only serve one purpose, and that's to steal, to kill, and destroy. And that's their entire goal. Or if you are a Christian, it's to end any effectiveness that you would have for the kingdom. If you're not a Christian, it's to damn you to hell. To make sure that you never get there. That's what that's for. So I believe it's a spirit of, because mentally, there's nothing in the animal kingdom that attacks itself. Dolphins don't do that. Monkeys don't do that. Lions don't do that. Tigers don't just run and just dive off of cliffs. They don't do that. They're not hardwired that way. They're hardwired to survive. I don't think it's mental health at all. I think it's a spirit. I think it's an evil spirit. What do you think?
It makes sense to me. I mean, that's you're not wrong. And the when you were talking about it, I was going back to my childhood of my low self-esteem. It was always you're 100% right. It was never, I'm not smart or I'm fat. It was always you're worthless, you're fat, it was never, and I never thought about it that way until and that's why I was saying molding over. I'm like, you're not wrong. The sad part is it's all self-doubt.
Hmm.
I mean, think about it. If you've ever gone day to day and had a negative thought about yourself, I've never sat there and been like, I really messed up today. I did, you are this, and kind of like,
So anyway, so yeah, I think we kind of found out what those what those fiery darts were trying to prevent. Um, but so tell me about this, okay? So now you and your new wife,
Mhm.
right? You guys are married. Were you guys already both saved, or did you guys both kind of find faith together?
We were both saved. She definitely, I was in the beginning process. Like, I completely believed in Jesus, but it was a very ignorant, you know, understanding. There was a lot of things I was there. I didn't, I wasn't completely like, I'm not, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a way to describe it. I believed in Jesus Christ. I accepted Jesus Christ, but I still had a lot of shortcomings that I needed to work through. And I mean, I still do, but I was
Yeah.
nowhere near where I am now.
So had
And
some rough edges that he
yeah,
needed to smooth out.
I bought the gym membership. I went and checked out the machines. I haven't hit the free weights yet. You know what I mean? About the best way I could describe it. And you know the this is probably gonna cause some issues too. Uh, I I laugh because as a man, even when I was I was a certified NRA pistol instructor for a while, and I always joked I love teaching women better than men because women listen better. Um, and I had that problem, right? It's funny. I look back at now, and me and my wife actually had this conversation when we were running errands today. Um, I laugh at the people that think that a Christian woman is just a pushover, right? Oh, they say that a Christian woman's supposed to be, the husband comes first, and I'm like, evidently, y'all need to meet my wife because that woman by no means is a pushover in my house.
Right.
She will tell you I am first among equals, but she is also, the Bible says she's a helpmate. And if you actually look in the actual definition of a helpmate using the Greek words, it's not talking about no mammy pamby like, hey, go, make dinner. My wife will call me out on my stuff quick. Um, and I laugh because when we were, new into the marriage, I used to look at it and I'm like, why is she always nagging me? Why is she always on me? Um, and the more and more I stopped taking that pride and, listening to what she had to say, the better the better things got for me because it wasn't, her mood, but it was, these are issues she would see and she'd be like, babe, you need to fix this.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest ones and one of the most thankful ones I actually was, and maybe the Holy Spirit was talking through her that night. I don't know what it was, but I was just really receptive. She pulled me aside. We were, new into our relationship. I think we'd probably been dating like 6 months at the time. She's like, "Hey, listen, I have a problem," and I'm like, "Okay, with what? Like, well, what's going on?" And she's like, you're porn," and I'm like, "Okay." And so she told me how it made her feel, and then we discussed it biblically as well. And at that moment, I was like, "All right, I'm done. I promise you right now, I'm done watching porn." And she was like, kind of like, okay, sure. But I've kept to it. And from that moment on, I have not watched a single video. I haven't had a care to watch a single video. Um, but even more so, like I have three teenage sons. Um, two are grown, one's still very much in the house. And hell, 2 weeks ago, I had the conversation with my son about it. Hey, your friends are gonna want to show you stuff on their phone. Don't watch it. It's a trap.
Yeah.
Not only is it a trap, spiritually, the physical elements that it causes on the person. And so, we talked about, biblically, we talked about it, actual what it does scientific to your brain. And he was looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, I'm telling you, bud, like, I can't force you to do anything. I can just tell you right now, and like I told all my sons, I don't watch it. I refuse to watch it. And, it's probably one of the best things that I've ever done for my marriage, especially starting off, young in it. It's a trap. It really is. It gives guys a false sense of reality. Um, but what trips me out more than anything is I go back and I look at all the years that I went searching for God, and I don't remember ever once hearing about hearing a pastor talk about porn. I
You know
don't
why?
because the devil doesn't want him to.
Because they were probably watching it.
Probably.
Unfortunately, this is this is also another really taboo subject that a lot of Christians are tied up in this stuff. A lot of pastors are tied up in this stuff. Um, I'm not going to give you the any kind of I'm not going to throw any numbers out here that they wouldn't be current or accurate. Um, but I will do another deep dive here on that. But the numbers are pretty discouraging when you see it. At least the people that answer polls honestly, which I don't know. I would assume most people are too ashamed to even fill out a poll, let alone answer it honestly. So you would have to assume that the number is actually far higher. And you know, this is actually a very, very common thing. This isn't like a ooh, you're dirty and nasty
Mhm.
because you look at this stuff and, if anybody knew what you look at, bro, take a look at some of these other people in your church's browser history. And here's the thing about it. Um, it's not to cast shame on anybody,
Yeah.
but we have to understand here what the Bible clearly calls sin. And it's sexual immorality. At the end of it's lust, it's sexual immorality. It's whether it's self sex, whatever you want to call it. Okay. um if you're just pleasuring yourself or whatever, it's still sexual acts outside of the bond of a marriage between a man and a woman. um it's still it's still not as it is was created to be. So by definition, it's sexual perversion. And so it's also voyeurism. And that's it's not getting preachy about anything. I was addicted to this stuff for 20 plus years until God
Mhm.
saved me. I mean, and it was just the type of thing that, like, especially being in the military, um, you know, forward deployed, you walk into the hooch, and with, the rest of the squad there, it wasn't nothing to, walk past and see Hustler magazines. And I'm not even just talking about like Playboys. I mean like the dirty, raunchy
Mhm.
triple X one. You know what I mean? And it was just it wasn't any. I mean, you would see that right next. You would see next to a Guns and Ammo or a Field and Stream. You know what I mean? It is what it is. It's we liked what we liked. We liked booze. We liked nicotine, right? We liked Marlboro. We liked Grizzly, and we liked Hustler. You know what I mean? It's just and it's so normalized in military culture. Now, obviously, you can't be looking at that stuff if like uh, Oregon and the police force. You can't work at that stuff. I have so many fireman jokes here, but I'll take it easy.
Don't be scared.
uh, yeah, I don't know what goes on at the firehouse, but I, like still, there's still that alpha machismo,
Mhm.
um, like environment where you know, same thing. We like drinking, we like smoking, we like dipping, and we like hot naked chicks. So, and now every kid
Yep.
got one of these. And you know what I mean? Like, even if you put parental controls on it, kids are smart now. They got Chat GPT. They can ask Chat, hey, how do I defeat these parental controls? Chat GPT will tell them. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So, like, if they want to do it, they're gonna find a way. Um, it's super dangerous. I think it's 100% intentional to kneecap men.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think I remember he used to look at it as, oh, I'm a good guy. I looked at it based off of works, right? And I can't remember who it was. Someone, had pulled me when we were talking, and he was like, based off of works, he goes, "Are you really that good of a guy?" And I'm like, I think I am. And this kind of helped me with the porn thing. And he's like, Let's talk about it. Like, have you ever lied?" "Oh, yeah." "You ever cheated?" "Uh, you ever, stolen?" "Have you ever, dishonored your parents?" And I'm like, "Ooh." He's like, "You ever committed adultery?" And I was like, "Nope." And he goes, "You sure about that?" And I was like, "Yeah, positive. I ain't never done it." And he was like, "You ever lusted after another woman? Ever watched porn?" And I was like, "Yeah, but," and he's like, and so I had to look it up real quick. Matthew 5:28-29. And as soon as he told me the verse, I was like, "Ooh,
How many
yeah,
times have I done that?
I've done that." And so Jesus says, "But I say unto you that everyone that's looking on a woman in lust has committed adultery in their hearts." And I'm like, "Ooh," and that one hit me because we've all done it.
Yeah,
And like I said earlier, when that it might not be possession, but oppression. The girl walks by in a little dress or cleavage hanging out, and you go to, no, Lord, Jesus, cast those thoughts away from me. I want nothing to do with it. Um, it's the same thing with porn. It really is. It's I looked at it that way, and I was like, no, I don't. I'm in love with my wife. I don't want to look at other women.
yeah,
Um, and of course, she gets mad at me. I tell her she's the most beautiful woman in the world, and she rolls her eyes. But it's one of those things. Like, I can honestly say, in my relationship with Jesus, it's the only woman I look at, and man, it's an amazing feeling. And
yeah,
that comes from watching porn for years. And I look back, and I'm like, I don't want anything to do with that person.
yeah.
I just don't.
It really changes your perspective because it's like, okay, have you seen one video? Just one?
Yeah.
No, probably seen,
Oh no.
probably can't even count. So,
Yeah.
like, to put it in perspective, yeah, David was an adulterer for what he did with Bathsheba.
Hmm.
Well, let's crunch the numbers. So David struck out there. How many porn videos have you ever watched?
I don't have enough fingers and
Yeah,
toes to
I
count.
don't. So that's my point.
Yeah.
Um, that's my point is, yeah, no, you're not a good person. You're actually way
Yeah.
worse than you thought you were.
Yeah.
Um, And it all goes back to Romans 3:23. All have fallen short of the glory of God, every single last one of us. And so I think that's super important, though, because people used to look at people that pushed purity culture, and they thought they were just a bunch of snobs and prudes. But what they didn't realize is that they were right, and they were really looking out for your best interest.
Mhm.
And it's the type of thing that hindsight is 2020, and hey, it's better to learn it late than never. I mean, I just I actually wanted to talk about this real quick before we move on to our last little segment here. And I was doing a live on TikTok where I was talking about this. And what I was talking about was, as soon as you start making headway, um, walking the walk of sanctification, and you were taking your purity and your sanctification seriously, and your walk with Christ seriously, like you're not just tacitly going about it, you're actively picking up your cross and following him daily, right? Denying self and glorifying him. When you start doing that, things are going to start manifesting in your life. Demonic things will manifest and will rise up against you in your life, depending on what it is that you're trying to combat and overcome. Um, if you were a drinker for forever, and and now you found Christ, and you're getting clean, and you're moving away from the bottle, the there are monitoring spirits. There are spirits that are tasked with watching you, surveilling you, probing you, and they send that information back to the enemy, and they give them a sit rep. They give them a situation report, and they go, "Hey, listen, this is Nathan. This is how he's doing. This is what's going on. This is what he's trying to change. This is what he's not doing anymore." And they give that information back. And then you know what? A couple weeks goes by. Guess who comes back around? Good old drinking buddies, right?
Mhm.
These guys that you haven't talked to. Hey, maybe old army buddies, guys that you haven't talked to in forever, guys that you used to howl at the moon with, right? Hey, man, just here for the brotherhood, just here to talk to you, right? These old drinking buddies, they're gonna come back. And I was talking about it. I was like, listen, it's the same thing with sexual purity, pushing away from pornography and all this other things. And dude, while I'm in the middle of this stream talking about this, a woman enters my chat, the live chat, promoting her OnlyFans, and links to people. Hey, this is an 18 plus XXX website, and spamming the chat to go to her porn site. In my chat, talking about
Mhm.
manifesting demonic spirits that will come up to trip you up once you start walking on the right path. I had one do it in real time in the chat.
Mhm.
And my buddy was like, dude, that's a demon in your chat. and it's like, and I go, yeah, Bubba, Ephesians 6:12, man. It's not all like The Exorcist and green puke and flying around and all that other stuff. I'm like, this stuff is real, and this stuff happens. And the hard part, you know, before we move on to the last thing that I wanted to talk about, have you ever seen the movie Nefarious?
No, I don't think so.
You gotta watch it. You gotta watch it. I It's a movie that released in 2023, right? I'm reading the book now. Um,
Okay.
and it is fantastic. I don't want to ruin it, But essentially, the whole point of the movie Nefarious is there's a death row inmate that is getting ready to stand execution, and they have to have a clinical psychologist come in to evaluate him to see if he is mentally capable of standing execution or if he is just completely criminally insane, right? So that's the movie setting is his last day, and this clinical psychologist has to come in and has to start having a conversation with him and see like is he mentally competent enough
Mhm.
to like he knows the difference between right and wrong and good and bad and all this other stuff so that he can stand for his execution that's at the end of the day. When he's talking to him, when the warden is taking him to the prisoner, he goes, I just want to let you know, be on guard when you're talking to this guy, right? This guy is a genius. He is a master manipulator. Okay. Um, he's a wordsmith. And before the day is done, he'll have you thinking that you're the murderer. And the guy's like, yeah, okay, whatever. He's just a crazy prisoner. When he gets down and he sits down, and the whole movie is a conversation between the psychologist and this prisoner. And when he sits and he starts talking to him, the guy's talking about himself in the third person. So he asks him, why do you keep saying about it like this? Um, he asks him what his name is, and he said his name is Nefarious. And he's like, Nefarious? And he goes, what? I don't understand. And he explains to him, and he goes, I'm a demon. And so he's like, oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So this is going to be one of these. And he goes, oh, so you don't believe me? And so talking with him back and forth, um, you see he's getting in the psychologist's head and stuff. And anyway, I don't want to ruin the entire movie, but there was one point in the movie. He knew that the psychologist was a staunch atheist, like a militant atheist, thought all this religious stuff was a bunch of mumbo jumbo. And so really thought he was a chauvinist and a clown. You know what I mean? He knew he didn't take him seriously. And he got him so spun around and so pissed off when he was talking to him, just made a complete fool of him and was a masterclass because this guy thought that he was just some stupid prisoner and he made him look like an idiot. This guy's a
Yeah.
doctor, right? And the doctor gets up, gets pissed off, throws his papers all over the place, and goes to storm out. And then he stops and realizes, like, oh, okay, he's getting to me. He kind of got the better of me. So the doctor, he comes, picks up his papers, puts it back on the desk, sits down, and he's like, I'm sorry. I lost my cool. I shouldn't have done that. I just want to move on. And the prisoner looks at him and he goes, so are you ready for round two? And the doctor just pauses and looks at him and he goes, I didn't know this was a fight. And he just looks at him and he goes, that's why you're losing. And
Mhm.
that line right there stuck with me. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, dude, how true is that for stuff that we go through every single day? We are losing these fights. We are losing fights with porn. We're losing fights with lust. We're losing fights with booze. We're losing fights with depression. We're losing fights with all of these things. And the reason we're losing is because we don't even know it's a fight to
Yeah.
begin with.
So think about it from the military aspect, because I was going to add this in, but it ties in. If you're an up armored unit, right? you're going into battle. You know where your strengths are, right? You know where your weaknesses are. So does the enemy.
Mm,
And I tell people, think about it all the time. I know, like one of the things I know where my strengths are. I know where, I walked away from porn like it was no tomorrow.
yeah.
It was easy. I can tell you right now, pride is probably one of my biggest downfalls,
Yeah.
and I know it. And I constantly, like, I'll catch myself. No, you're being prideful today. You know, if something happens, be quick. Know where your strengths are. Know where your weaknesses are. And as a man, you should know that to begin with. Um,
Yeah.
and I think you, you've never been spanked until you've been Holy Spirit spanked. But I've been Holy Spirit spanked before, and now I sit there and catch myself, and even talking about going to work and talking about the issues we had with this podcast last week. A couple times I'm like, you know, it wasn't my words. It
Yeah.
wasn't your words that the enemy was after. It was us glorifying God and
Yeah.
talking and spreading the word of Jesus. And that's probably one of the big things. I'm like, this isn't my story. This isn't this is all because Jesus had a plan for me. God had a plan for me, and like the gentleman he is, he sat there with his hand out, just waiting for me to take a hold of it. My wife, like I said, my wife has sayings all the time that, and I pick them and I keep them, and God is the perfect gentleman. He is always sitting there with his hand out, just waiting for you to take a hold of it. All you got to do is grasp. And luckily for me, I didn't wait till it was too late to reach out.
All right, man. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about. Okay, so like, I saw some of your workout videos, and you know, when I was talking to you about a week and a half ago, you told me that there was a point in time where you went and got your test levels checked, and they were really low. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'd been filling off for probably a couple years. And I started doing the research. I'm a research kind of guy, right? I want to know every angle before I make a decision. Um, so I went and got checked out, and one of the biggest problems we have, and I blame this, I don't think this is just happenstance that it's set up this way, but they say that the normal man is between 350 and 900 on your testosterone levels. I mean, if you think about that, that's a giant, split. So I went and got checked, and I was sitting at like 300. But the problem is, I grew up hunting, fishing, outdoors, football, wrestling, the military, right? I used to put on muscle like it was no tomorrow. If I walked in the weight room, I'd bulk quickly, which would to me would tell I probably had a little bit of a higher testosterone level than some people, at 20 years old, and now I'm sitting at 300. So if I was on the high end of it, 900 when I was 20, which we don't know because we don't check, and now I'm sitting at 300, I've dropped my testosterone over by 2/3. Um, so I ended up going to one doc. When I checked out, it was just over the limit. So I went to another one, got checked out, and this one was like, "Yeah, you're low. Let's get you on a regimen. We'll start testosterone therapy or hormone therapy." And it was one of those things like I was really nervous about it because my anxiety, my PTSD, I was afraid, you hear all the roid rage and the Chris Benoit stories and this and that.
Yeah.
And so I was scared. I was like, I don't know how this is gonna work. I just know something's not right. And I wasn't living up to, where I thought I should be. Um, and so I ended up getting checked. And I think the reason I actually, my wife at the time was, praying that and we'd had the conversation, that I'd be the man that Christ has designed me to be, helping push me because I was in a slump. I was, I was working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, commuting 3 to 4 hours every day on top of that. So I mean, I was putting in some serious long days, and I got tested, got started on TRT, and then I remember the first Sunday, it was the one day off a week I got. My wife woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I had already like almost completed all of our meal preps for the day. And she's like, whoa. And she's like, you all right? And I'm like, I woke up, I felt amazing. Like my energy level was up. Um, and not like in a bad way. I was just like, man, I just feel good. I feel like I did when I was younger. And so I went through and, I've stayed on it since then. And, you know, it's funny to me because that fear that I had of, the anger is actually the complete opposite. I am more now like things that would set me off, 2 years ago happen at work and I just kind of shrug it off. I'm like, yeah, it's no big deal. My mental, aspect of it is just so much better. Um, and so, it's one of those things like I try telling guys, go get checked out, get your levels checked because you know, your testosterone levels play more into your mental health than you think. And unfortunately, we live in a society where so much of the things that we deal with on a daily basis lower our testosterone levels and we don't even know it.
Yeah.
Our food, half the food we eat nowadays lowers your testosterone level. If you don't get enough sleep, those guys that, those kids right now that are gaming 19 hours a day and getting 4 hours of sleep, I guarantee their testosterone levels are in the dumpster. I mean, I guarantee they're low. And so all these things play in, and it's amazing that once you start getting to a normal, like if you were not eating all this processed junk that we eat, and you get back to what will be considered normal or optimal, how well you feel. And I mean, I'm not going to say I don't have days that, I just don't feel like working out. We all have those days, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
work, whatever. But I can tell you that my energy level, my motivation, and my mental health, you know, is probably the best it's been since I can remember. Between that and getting closer with God, I mean, you take those two and put them together, and it's a winning strategy. It's funny because I look back at the guy I was 2 years ago, and I'm like, I tell my wife all the time, I'm 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 glad that you know she prayed for me. And I'm trying to be be more the man that God created me, and I feel like every day I can get closer and closer to that person, right? And you know, it's it's kind of crazy to me because I've gone to a lot of churches and church shopping, moving different places, and one of the things that I think I struggle with the most in understanding is the lack of men, and I'm talking like manly men.
Yeah.
The Victor Marxes, and I hate to use the Jockos and the what's the other dude that runs the
David
ultra marathon?
Goggins.
Yeah, the David Goggins, right? You know the and it's nothing against those guys. I'm not talking crap about them or anything like that, but I look at the strong Christian men. Um,
Yeah.
I actually had the pleasure, one of the guys I work with, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he runs what do they call them? It's the something Raiders. It's one of the countries um, one of the Asian countries that's been under turmoil for years. Um, I wish I could remember the name of the guy, but he's a Christian, that's been over there helping them fight for years. His family's all over there. those are the guys. Like I start looking at them, like I'm like, man, I want to be, one, I want to be more like Jesus, but two, when I look at, what I want to, try to mold who I am and try to follow, those are the guys I'm really looking at because I'm like, man, those guys are not only are they walking the faith, but they're men. They're not,
Yeah.
you walk in, you're like, hey, how's it going? They're like, hi, it's so nice to meet you. Welcome to our church. And you're like, eh.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say that because like you look if you look at Jesus and you look at like this depiction that they have of him, it's always, you know, he's always got long flowing hair, a perfectly manicured beard, right? And now granted, he's God, okay? So he can look however he wants. I understand that. But you know, look at where he lived and look at how he lived, right? You lived in Nazareth, okay, which is kind of the boonies of Israel, all right, which in and of itself is in the desert, okay? It's really hot, right? Not a whole lot of AC going on around Nazareth, okay? And he's a carpenter. I mean, look at carpenters now, wiry, veins popping out everywhere, all right? Just rough, tough dudes.
Mhm.
And those are carpenters now.
Yeah.
Now, now versus back then. And I I imagine if you shook his hand, it probably wouldn't feel very nice. You
No.
know what I mean? It probably grabbed you and you're like, hey, holy moly, all right. But yeah, it's he looks like this nice hippy dippy creamy lotiony hands Jesus that's just all he does is just turn the other cheek and he's just okay with all grace, no holiness, all forgiveness, no fire, no, and he was a carpenter from Nazareth. I
Yeah.
mean, he was probably a pretty rough dude. And
Right.
you know, you don't see a lot of that anymore. You don't see a whole lot of that anymore, especially not in the church today.
Well, and I mean, look at our society in a whole. I mean, I see these kids come in, into the construction world, as electrician now, and it's they're soft men, lots and
Yeah.
lots of soft men, and it's people are like, well, I don't understand why we're having the hard times we're having. It's the soft men that have created it, and you know what? The sad part is it's the easiest way to destroy a society. And,
Yeah.
I look at the, between the testosterone levels and the divorce rates and the single parents and everything. And, what's the number one thing that you see in all of that?
Low T
S-
or
s-
no T.
Yeah, no testosterone, no men. And, you can look at the numbers, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but you look at what um, uh, I'm trying to think of what it's called, but you look at the single parent households and everything, and what's more likely to happen, without a man in the house. And
I mean, I mean, you really want to blast from the past. Look at those old black and white films um, of high school kids
mhm,
in gym class,
yeah,
and look at them. They look ripped. They all look like Navy SEALs. They all
yeah.
look like SF guys. You know what I mean? And these are just high school kids. You know what
Well,
I
kind of,
mean? Yeah.
You remember the high weight standards? I remember
Yeah.
when I scored the 297 or 296, whatever it was, right? I did it at 178 pounds. At 5'9", I was 178 pounds. And my first sergeant was like, they're like, "Hey, do we gotta tape him?" And they're like, "Yeah, we gotta tape him, top. He's 4 pounds over." My most I was supposed to weigh at 5'9" was 174 pounds. And our first sergeant was like, "Did this guy just score almost a 300 on the PT test? Why are we taping him?"
Yeah.
Because I was that big compared to what these guys were back then when they came up with the system. So I mean, yeah, it's crazy. You look at what the how much society has changed. Now even look even more.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, for sure.
we're not even
Um,
as hard as our grandparents were.
no, I think it's something like I don't even want to know. Like, if they could check their testosterone, like checking my grandfather's testosterone
Hmm.
at 34 versus when I'm at 34,
Yeah,
probably two very different things. I mean, and you know, I thought I'm pretty manly, but
yeah,
nothing. And I think a lot of that is not just due to like, because of course every generation before you is like, they went to school up mountains both ways, 10 miles and, over broken glass and all that other stuff. But again, you also look at the water, you look at the food, you look at everything, and like everything now, without getting super conspiratorial, because I guarantee you that'll be a whole other episode in and of itself, and you'll get my wife going because she'll never stop, and because she's all about they're putting stuff in the food, and I do
you
believe
told me
that's
what
true
that
because
episode is. I'll jump on it.
this is probably going to get me tanked right here, but you know what? Again, I'll whatever. Everything that they're putting in the food and in the water and in everything. I mean, even in this. I mean, I know it's garbage and I shouldn't be drinking it. Um, but you know, everything. You can't get away from it. Everything that goes into your face is just to make you fat, slow, gay, and stupid. That's how you
I mean,
destroy a nation.
we've been putting fluoride in water for how long, and what do we found out about fluoride in water?
People are probably like, whoa, you can't say that. No, I mean, no, for real. I mean, makes frogs gay. Everything is supposed to make you fat, slow, gay, and stupid. Everything about that destroys men,
Yeah,
which
and
in turn destroys the family, which in turn destroys the nation.
the funny part is, so like they say the average male TRT right now, like the average, right? The median, whatever you want to call it, is like 450. I can tell you right now, I sit between about 1,000 to 1,200, is where they have me, and with my doctor, and I feel like I'm 20 again. So if I feel like I'm 20 again at that level, these kids that are sitting at 450,
That's not right. There's something wrong there.
there's
There's
an
something
issue.
wrong there.
If
Yeah.
my levels are twice, and I'm not saying like I'm not running around like throwing up, weights like it's going crazy, but I feel like I'm in my 20s. I don't even feel like I'm you know better than like Superman. I'm
Well, I got to get on that because my thing is that I don't know, just that fire, the drive
Yeah.
is just like gone. You know what I mean? And I just woke up one day and I just like I know the sad and I know like you can't really know unless you know somebody before,
Hmm.
but I look back now and I don't even know who that guy is.
Yeah.
I'm like, who the hell is that guy? I don't know. I mean, because I don't feel like it because now I'm just like, I don't care.
And
And
people don't understand it.
I
They
think
won't
that's the
understand until
point.
they see the difference.
I think that's the point. And when I realized that,
Hmm.
I was like, oh no, Oh no, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So I think I probably needed to hear this more than anything. If anybody else didn't need to, I needed to hear this because I need to, for sure. I need to go get checked.
Well, and it's
Um,
depressing. It really
it
is.
is depressing. It is
It's
depressing because
to see an issue that you need to take, but you just don't have the energy, or there's something missing there that you're just like, I need to be better. But how do I get better? And
yeah,
it's
I
that thought.
so so that's definitely important for everyone listening. If you're a guy, you've got to get your T levels checked, and I'm going to be doing that here soon. Here shortly, I'm going to be getting mine as well. And because I'm sick of it, man. I'm tired of living like this. I'm tired of it, and I don't think it's entirely just because I'm being weak or I'm being a wiener.
Mhm.
I'm not weak, and I'm not a wiener. Um, done a lot of crazy stuff in my life, but I just hit this wall, and you know your body, and I know I'm like something's wrong. Something's wrong, and so
Mhm.
I'm definitely going to be going to get checked, but I gotta I got a couple short questions I wanted to ask you real quick, and before we sign off here, man. So and I know that this is the Spark Notes version. As long as this podcast episode is, I know that this is the Spark Notes version because I know that this isn't covering everything that you felt and everything that you thought and all the ups and downs. I can definitely tell you've had one hell of a roller coaster of a life, right? And all of the pitfalls and all of the peaks and all of the emotions, good and bad, all the shouting and all the tears that go along with it. I mean, you've been through it. You've been through the gauntlet. So even as long as this is, I know this is the Cliff Notes version, but with everything that you lost, your dreams, your first wife, your old self, um, why why do you still believe in God? Why still believe in God?
I think I believe in God more now than I did back then. I look at my life I have now. I look at who I am as an individual now. I look at everything I have. I am more blessed now than I ever have been. Um, and I think it's faith, right? Um, it's having faith that God has a plan for me and He's going to work His will through me. Um, and it's there's just something comfortable, and it sounds really weird, especially being someone that likes being in control of everything, knowing that I'm not in control of anything. At the end of the day, I really am not. Um, you know, I God gives us free will, but at the end of the day, I mean, He's going to work His way through us, and I just I take comfort that everything I've been through in life has led me to where I am now, to this conversation.
Yeah.
If one person comes to Christ through this, or one person, says, "Hey,
Comes back. Yeah.
I'm about ready to, bite a bullet, and you know, I need to go get my levels checked. Something's not right, whatever it is, right?" Um, that's all God's plan, and that's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So so let me ask you this. What hindsight is always 2020. And you've obviously lived a pretty crazy life. What do you know now that in retrospect, like if you were to look back maybe you noticed some of these times where God was trying to show you something or explain something to you, either through somebody that came to your doorstep, or a friend, or that invited you to church, or a circumstance or something where, like, if you look back, then you'd be like, I think he was trying to tell me this back then, but I just wasn't ready. And now that you're here and you know that lesson, if you could impart a gold nugget of spiritual wisdom here to somebody out there that's listening, um, what what lesson would you leave behind for them? What truth would you leave behind for them?
Hmm. I think the biggest lesson, it's two of them. One, pray for those that have wronged you. And two, have faith. And not the whammy pamby, I go to church every Sunday faith. Like, just sit back and, if something, whatever happens, be like, God has a plan for me. I just need to, you know what? I just need to sit down and just follow the course. Follow this, stick to the mission. And you know what? Whatever it is, whether I figure it out or don't figure it out, God's plan's perfect. And I just need to have faith in that.
Okay. All right, man. Well, listen, uh, this is definitely an unorthodox episode, especially in the way that we had to tape it. But we made it. We made it. We're skull dragging across the finish line, but we made it. Nathan, man, I love your story. I love everything that you're doing. With the fitness um, stuff. Don't stop. Keep doing it. Keep tweaking it. Keep playing with it. Keep figuring it out. Keep posting, like I was saying, with the
Yeah.
whole algorithm thing. Um, and yeah, just keep doing your thing. And, you know, I used to think that, oh, what does this matter? You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
just a video. Nobody's gonna see it. And man, um, the reason why I love these episodes where where I have a guest. I don't know if I'm going to have a guest on my next one. I think my next one, I'm finally going to be done with this solo segment that I've been working on for the next facet of the new age that I'm going to be doing an expose on. So, um, but these ones where I have guests come on and talk and share their stories, you know, you have no idea who might be struggling with a question, that have been struggling with this question for years, and you might have just, like, not even thought about it. You just bing bang boom, you answered the question, moved on, didn't even think that it was, barely a moot point, right? But you answered something that has been plaguing them for years, with these testimonials. And so that's why I think everyone's testimony and everyone's story is unique, and not just unique and that they get 15 minutes of fame and airtime and whatever, and they get to see themselves on a screen. They might be answering questions, like I said, spiritually, that have been kicking the snot out of people for years. Oh, maybe I need to get my T checked. I thought I was the only one that lost a spouse. Or, holy crap, I'm not the only one that felt like they got robbed, trying to go out for MARSOC or
Right.
Navy SEALs or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's like these stories, they they carry weight because, like I said to you, a couple weeks ago, it's, the whole thing about these guest appearances and these testimonials is real men, real stories, real problems, real answers, right? Real. This is real stuff. And you have no idea who you might be helping. You've helped me. I can tell you that. You've helped me.
Good.
You've answered a couple questions that I've been trying to figure out. So man, Nathan, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. I know it's late. I know, I know we kind of crunched this, and I appreciate you sticking it out with me. I appreciate you coming back here for round two. Um, Hey, like I said, we did what we had to do, soldiered on through, and we got it done. Listen, man, you ever want to come back on in the future, just let me know. And for everybody else that are watching this episode, he's Mouth on TikTok. Do you have any other social media?
No, just the TikTok.
Okay, well, he's Mouth. I mean, you'll find him on my thing. So go like his stuff, subscribe to his page, show him some love, share his stuff, and just look for more stuff from him in the future. And for everybody else that watches the show, listen, Jesus is king, hell is real, time is short. All right, be strong, endure, contend for the faith. Nathan, appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on.